professional staff. Our apologies for starting 5 minutes over time. We were just dealing with some technical issues, but that has now been resolved. Once again, thank you for making the time for this meeting. I will start the meeting right away, but before I do that, I'm going to give a minute for reflection, and the minute starts now. Thank you very much. As usual, we're going to do our drill that we used to. We're going to do our introductions. I'm going to start with those in the committee room. I'll start with myself. I'm Emery Boyson, and I'm the chairperson for the Standing Committee for Health and Wellness. I'm going towards my left.
Morning, everyone. I am Benedicta van Minnen, a member of the committee.
Thank you, Member van Minnen. Members online, you may introduce yourselves.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Donita Stevens, and I'm a member of this committee.
Morning.
Good morning, Chairperson, all honourable members and the department. Wendy Kaiser Philander and committee member. Thank you.
Thank you, member. Other members online on the virtual platform? I can see some of the members. Member Van Voegel.
Good morning, Chair. Am I audible, Chair?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Chair, everyone. My name is Rachel Van Voegel, and I'm a member of this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, member. I think those are all the members online. I'm going to come into the committee room. Minister, over to you, and then I'll give over for you to give over to your officials. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning to the honourable members of the Standing Committee on Health and Wellness. My name is Mireille Wenger, and I'm the Provincial Minister responsible for the department. I'll ask the officials to introduce themselves, please.
Thank you, Minister.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honourable members and the honourable Minister. My name is Simon Kay. I am the Deputy Director General responsible for corporate service support. And
good morning, committee members. Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Dr. Tendani Mabuda, Director, People Development.
Good morning, Chair
Morning.
and committee members. Dr. Vatiswa Maiki, Deputy Director, Nursing.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. I'm Karin Kleinans. I'm from the Chief Directorate People Management and People Strategy.
Thank you. And our two favorite visitors at the back. Thank you. Thank you. Minister, I'm going to give over to you for opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. We have prepared a presentation to the committee on our people management and human resource strategy. As you'll see from the presentation, that human resource management doesn't just come in isolation of the general work of the department. And so we'd like to share with you how our people management strategy fits in with our provincial strategic plan and our 5-year strategy and goal, and how we try and navigate these despite very difficult circumstances and austerity that the province has been battling through over the last few years. We'd like to show the integrated response that we have towards people management through the presentation. So with that, some brief remarks, I'll hand over to Mr. Kay, who will be delivering the presentation on behalf of the department.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Kay, over to you.
thank you once again, Chair. Thank you, Minister. So let me get straight into it. I think we're working. That's good. So the presentation will cover 4 thematic areas. The first one is just to bring, as Minister said, bring the strategic update into focus so that we can see where the people strategy nests within that. And then having a look specifically on the impact of the policy environment on recruitment and retention over the last kind of 2 years, and a couple of concluding concluding results or remarks. So a departmental strategy update. So let me do this. I think this is a useful place to start this. I must thank Dr. Kluti, who did the animation on this presentation. He has skills that are beyond my ken. But suffice to say that provincial government's strategic intention is to provide a vehicle to drive forward integrated opportunities and collaborative approaches to working together with cross-sectional leadership to ensure our current and future well-being challenges are tackled through a whole of government and transversal public policy responses. It follows a whole of society approach across the life course of the people we serve so that we can thrive together in a natural world. So this is a graphical representation of the whole of society and the life course. And it's rooted in the individual, the person. And so everything that we do is people-centric. And that is why a people strategy is so central to any health department strategy. And health department strategy drives the departmental people strategy. So the life course takes us through from before we're born, through childhood and adolescence, into our adult years, and into our twilight years. So that we can age gracefully. And so it is within this context of the transformational change that the department seeks to support people across the life course, to enable children and young people to start well, adults to live well, and the elderly to age well. And of course, we are nested in a broader government, in a broader community, which requires social integration, it requires structure, and then systemic cohesion is fundamental. Noting, of course, that health and wellness isn't just about people. There's climate, there's infrastructure. There are a number of things that support us. So our departmental strategy, in a nutshell, is as follows. It says the provincial health system reform is undertaken in collaboration with stakeholders, including but not limited to civil society, higher education institutions, the private sector, other government departments, specifically education and social development, the South African Police Services, and municipalities. So our service delivery reform redesign requires that services is delivered, the right care is provided at the right time, in the right place, for the right price. Our UHC reform strategy aims to transform the provincial health system to ensure equity and social justice. The governance reform is rooted in a system that nurtures ethical decision-making and shared purpose and values. And the public policy reform is to mobilize support for policy choices that ensure inclusive human development. So we are doing this with others in support of our impact statement, which is thriving together in a living world, underpinned by 4 value propositions: start well, live well, age well, and run well. And I will spend some more time explaining the run well, because that underpins a lot of what we do. So that is the provincial health system reform, not the provincial department of health system reform. It's a provincial system reform. Our organizational reform, we've identified a set of organizational reforms specifically focusing on the ways of being, which are inclusive, honest, and fair, so our connecting capabilities, ways of belonging, which is aligning through shared meaning, cultivating informal networks, and embodying a reform ethos, ways of becoming trusted, equitable, and people-centric, so our learning capabilities, and our ways of doing things right, doing the right things better over time, our actioning capabilities. We've adopted a very useful framing called the calm agenda. And the calm agenda asks that we as individuals come together and connect so that we can all align with purpose, so that we can learn together before we take the next right steps in terms of our actions. And that reflects, I think, very nicely our organizational reform. So these capabilities are necessary if the department is to co-create meaningful social change with other government departments, civil society, the private sector, and of course the people of our province. So our framework for action over the MTF over the next 3 years is rooted in cultivating a care system that really cares. So as I said already, when they start well, we want children and young people to start well so that they have the health resilience to thrive. We want a care system capable of nurturing healthy children and adolescent care. We want adults and people of working age to live well so that they are resilient and have the agency to maintain and restore their health and well-being. Our care system needs to be capable of supporting adults and people of working age to act in their best interest for their own well-being. This is about creating agency, individual agency. And then we want older people. We won't say how we define older people, but we want older people. I'm 3 weeks, no, 3.5, about 3 months away from turning 50, so I might be starting to be classified as old. Certainly my children say I'm old. So we want older people to age well so that they are resilient and have the agency to attain and sustain the best possible quality of life. We need to invest in care systems capable of supporting older people to function with fulfillment and a feeling of well-being. And so underpinning and supporting all of this is our Run Well agenda. So to support and enable the value propositions in a high-performing health system for you that is run well. A provincial health system that is run well means that we use our resources wisely, so we are prudent, to get the best possible outcomes, doing what works, and experience doing what matters for the population that we serve. So diving a little bit deeper into the Run Well, our strategic framework for action is about creating a network-centered care system capable of sustaining seamless care pathways. I've said where we want to go, so it's a high-performance provincial system for you. And so what is a high-performing provincial system that is running well? So our thinking is that a health system with a capability for continuity of care that produces better health outcomes, higher satisfaction rates in care, that is more cost effective. It creates public value and is premised on strong, trusting relationships with service providers. In redefining key stakeholder relationships, we nurture them premised on the values of inclusion, honesty, and fairness, rooted in interpersonal forms of power that are essential for the mobilization of the broader range of resources for health and a significant resilience advantage. Our organizational longevity depends on intentional leadership development through succession to ensure continuity and sustainable strategic momentum through periods of change. Succession plan mitigates skills gaps and preserves organizational culture and knowledge during leadership transitions. And so we are investing very heavily in relationships and the values and the behaviors that underpin those relationships as individuals and as we come together as collectives, as part of broader society. So we talk about system-wide and system-deep approaches. So I'll bring it all up so that we can see it all in. So you'll see the fidget spinner on the left. Thank you, Minister, for pointing out the fidget spinner. Well, it's a fidget spinner. So what is...
Looks like blood type.
Yeah, it's anyway. Let me say this. So our system is a network-centric system capable of sustaining seamless pathways underpinned by system-wide investment in governance, information, financing, human resources, medicine and technology, and service delivery. It emphasizes interdependence and interconnectedness across silos. So the fidget spinner on the right are the WHO building blocks with people at the center of everything. And so that is why there is a connection by and between everything with people at the center, that we focus on people centricity. And actually the fidget spinner is a very nice analogy, because everything, you hold the center straight, you hold the people, they hold the system. But to drive it, we drive it system deep. And so our system deep interconnectedness, our connecting capabilities, our ways of being, our aligning capabilities and ways of belonging, our learning capabilities and the ways of becoming, and the actioning capabilities, the ways of doing. We pay specific attention to the system software, so norms, values, relationships, and power. And therefore, people are at the center of everything that we do. So that gives a little bit of I'm hoping a little bit of a nesting in the departmental strategy, and how we arrived to this point, which is then our people strategy. So the first slide is a little bit busy, but it's a thinking slide. It explains our thinking around people management. So we want to have the theory of change as we aim to have an impact on what we do. And in this instance, is about access to quality care, achieving its goals, providing people-centric, high-quality care through a well-executed agile people strategy. You'll see that our impact is not only on our internal stakeholders, it is on our communities, it is around our services. So when we apply a people strategy, it isn't just internally focused, it is externally focused. The outcomes that we aim for are workforce, so workforce for ecosystems. We look for positive employee experiences, and we look for a transformative journey that is inclusive of others. And so ultimately that then leads us to the development of a people strategy, which looks at enhancing stakeholder awareness, improving skills and capability, and leadership support. And then I will spend some time in the activities and the outputs on the very next slide, which is basically I'll spend some time on the activities and inputs as part of the main slide. So what we've done here is to try and align or demonstrate the alignment between our run well levers. So I've spoken about continuity of care, redefining key stakeholder relationships and leadership development for succession, and they align with the various outcomes that we have within our people strategy. So, for example, workforce planning enables seamless patient-centered pathways and optimizes ICT for workforce efficiency. So the idea behind it and why we're doing it is it maintains uninterrupted patient pathways, reduces operational strain and improves service reliability, enables optimal workforce planning with technological enablement and intelligence to stabilize the health ecosystems. When it comes to redefining our key stakeholder relationships, both positive employee experience and our communities, we talk about trust, inclusion, very important psychological safety, and collaboration to build employee engagement and community value. This builds internal trust and external credibility, enhances inclusion, psychological safety and engagement, and strengthens collaboration with communities for shared problem solving. And then leadership development for succession, again, is around workforce planning and positive employee experiences. We want to ensure sustainability, talent retention, and strong leadership pipelines. This secures institutional knowledge and strategic continuity, supports workforce stability and growth opportunities, and inspires confidence via our structured leadership pipelines. So our strategy outcomes act as bridging enablers that transform our operational focus. So we spend a lot of time in operational churn around making things into people-focused and people-centered measurable impact, both our patients, or for our patients, their families, and ultimately our staff. And so this is our emergent people strategy. Our strategic journey is constantly emergent and constantly changing and being reshaped by different thoughts and different inputs and different experiences. And so I do say that this is an emergent people strategy and strategic framework. So we're calling it Leaders in People Service. Our vision is together empowering people and excellence in healthcare. And the mission is to provide professional people management services to transform healthcare services and create a supportive, inclusive culture through people-centric strategies. So the what? These are the 11 priorities. So the first priority is employee well-being. So to promote employee well-being and mental health, to create a healthy and supportive work environment. Workforce planning intelligence to develop workforce planning strategies and gather intelligence to ensure alignment with the departmental goals and the future needs and make evidence-based decisions. We'll spend a bit of time in some of the slides demonstrating what that is. Technological enablement is enhancing technology infrastructure and capabilities to support efficient and effective people management process and improve decision making. And again, I will demonstrate some of that in the evidence and the data that we show later. And then the fourth priority is communication enhancement, so improving internal communication processes and channels to facilitate people management related information sharing and employee engagement. The fifth priority is service design and integration, so enhanced service design and integration, delivering seamless and integrated people management services to employees and improving the overall patient experience. Sixth is another really important priority, is about organizational culture and values. Cultivating a positive and inclusive organizational culture that promotes collaboration, innovation, employee engagement, and a sense of belonging. So for us, culture is around shared values and shared purpose as individuals and as collectives. Or as a collective, and how then we interact with ourselves, with our patients, with our communities, with other stakeholders, and about being innovative, being honest, being open, being emergent. It's something that I must say, from a personal perspective, I often struggle to explain why I experience things slightly differently in different places, and this is the keystone. This is the cornerstone for me. Collaboration and partnership. So again, with culture and values comes collaboration and partnership. So fostering collaboration and partnerships both internally and externally to enhance innovation, knowledge sharing, and service delivery effectiveness. Leadership development is around cultivating effective people management leadership capabilities to drive, manage, and inspire talent succession and adaptation. So we are asking everybody to think 3 layers deep. So who replaces me, who replaces the person that replaces me, and replaces the person that replaces the person that replaces me. And thinking of that not necessarily specifically around individuals, but around what is the pool of talent that we have? How do we invest in those people so that they develop the capabilities? And where we don't have those specific capabilities, how and where do we go and find those specific capabilities? So that's it's not about just senior managers. Leadership is soaked throughout the organization. Training and development, so empowering employees through targeted training and development opportunities for skills, knowledge, succession planning, and career growth. That's why Dr. Mabuda is with us. Ensuring aligning with business objectives, so ensuring that people management practices are closely aligned with the strategic goals and objectives of the department. And you can see that as we've been going through this presentation, there are things that we also need to constantly align and refine as we move forward. And then last but by no means least is around performance accountability to establish clear performance expectations and accountability mechanisms to drive employee performance and departmental success. So this is more, it's not looking at performance and accountability through a punitive lens. This is looking at accountability for the success of the department. It's about creating an environment where we are not scared and fearful to fail forward. We learn by failing forward. It doesn't help us to be punitive in that learning cycle. So those are our people management priorities. There are 4 anchors that underpin everything. That's why Karina's here. And we will see some of the impact of policy interpretation and application at a system level. Change management, I'm reminded every time that change is difficult. Change is hard. We are human beings and most of us enjoy predictability, a fair bit of predictability. And yet in a complex adaptive system such as health, there are no clear paths. They are often quite murky and require a lot of change management. Talent attraction and retention, it's kind of quite important. A health system is built around people for people. And so attracting and retaining staff is key. And there have been no question, if we look at the policy impact, there has definitely been a challenge for the sector over the last couple of years. And then I spoke a little bit more around priority 8, around succession planning. And as I said, succession planning is not just about senior managers. It goes down to cleaners, operational managers, clerks, maintenance staff. It's across the depth and the breadth of the organization. So we'll spend a little bit of time now just focusing on workforce planning and using the intelligence to try and make sense of the world that we are working in. And so I'm going to spend time now on the impact of the policy environment on recruitment and selection. The first slide I stole courtesy of National Treasury, who have been doing some analyses on the health sector. So I must credit the National Treasury for this slide to show that the health sector across the country, the public health sector across the country, has been under enormous pressure. Over post-COVID, it has been under enormous pressure. And the impact of the austerity measures have been felt absolutely everywhere. You can see, and you'll see that from March 2024 to March 2025, we lost a total as a sector of 10,244 posts. Subsequent to March 2025, a further, near as makes no difference, 2,000 posts have been shed, with only the Western Cape and the Mpumalanga having been able to adapt practice to start filling more posts than are leaving. It has been brutal, it has been very hard, and it has been an emotional journey for all involved to be reduced like this. But I suspect if we look at the public service as a whole, we will find a similar trend to the public service as a whole. So I just give a snapshot over here. And in fact, this is the National Treasury. I have our own numbers. The austerity measures came in in basically the beginning of November 2023. And between November and March, we lost around about another 300 net posts. We lost about, I've got the number, I'll reflect back on the number, but this gives a snapshot. It's actually, the austerity measures were actually a lot worse, because you can see March 2023, it dropped from 325,000 employees down to 319,000 employees across the state. And so you can see that, and we will show this in the trend, that our practice is now able to replace more than we are losing within the province. So this is when I initially received the invitation to come and have a conversation with the standing committee on the impact of recruitment and retention, we dug deep into the numbers. So to explain, the timeline is from October 2023, and it goes through to July 2025. The grey line is the total headcount that we as a department have. The blue line is people entering the system. The orange is those that have exited. And at the bottom, it might not be so clear, so I will spend a little bit of time explaining. Didn't think I would. I decided not to include the detailed slides, but I will spend a little bit of time explaining what the various inflection points were over this time period that led to our worm going the way that it has gone. Suffice to say, we have significantly fewer people than we had in October 2023. So it actually started a little bit earlier in August 2023 with Budget Circular 1 of 2024, which in a nutshell basically said the fiscal framework is non-credible anymore. You will receive in-year cuts. That was the long and the short of it. We don't know quite how much those are going to be, but what we can promise you is that there are going to be in-year cuts. And so that's where the pawpaw and the fan started to meet each other. In October of 2023, the DPSA Circular 49 came out on the 17th of October, and the Provincial DG Circular 39 came out on the 30th of October. And for all intents purposes, that closed our ability, or it removed the delegations from the departments to place advertisements, and centered those into the premiers at the provinces. And on top of that, the National Treasury locked per cell. And the only way for you to be able to open a post was to get a specific code. And so there was basically, as people exited, it was impossible to replace them, because a recruitment and selection process takes at least 4 to 5 months. And they allowed a very, very short tail, but they'd already started to prepare everybody to slow down recruitment and selection. So that's what happened at that particular time. And you can see that there was a significant decrease. Now, I do just want to caution, you will see, I'm preempting a question. You're going to see that in December and January and February every year, there is a big exit and then a big intake. Those are our contracted appointments for internship and community service. So every year at the end of December for the medical interns, the interns leave and become community service. And then we get a new group in. And nursing happens generally in February. But there are other categories of staff that come in to do community service at different stages of the year. So there is always a spike and a dip at those particular points in time, and you can see it, and it will happen again this year. So then, at the same time, and I think sometimes we forget this, but at the same time, Public Service Regulation 16 amendments of 2023 arrived. Now, the Public Service changes its regulations or amends its regulations relatively infrequently. my memory serves me right, the one before this was the 2016 Public Service Relations, which introduced started the journey around professionalization, particularly in the public sector, which made it mandatory for SMS members, as an example, to have at minimum an NQF level 7 qualification. And so this was an update of those that happened at the same time as austerity. So we have austerity coming through, but at the same time, we have the new public service regulations. Now, they are many, many pages long, and there are a number of, I think, fairly substantial impacts. But the one that I'm going to focus on is the impact on recruitment and selection. So basically what the public service regulation said was, one, you have to, at a minimum, now place all advertisements in the DPSA vacancy circular, which is done nationally. And that document is only produced every 2 weeks. And over the period of December, November, December, and January, with the austerity and with the new switch over, there was basically very few, if any, adverts that were able to be placed in that period. So again, there was kind of these two waves rose together. So that was the first thing. And we'd always been able to advertise primarily at production line levels, just provincially, because we were allowed to do it. So what does that mean? So take the delay as an anomaly that happened at the same time and caused the wave to rise. But in the stroke of a pen, the number of applications that we started to receive probably tripled, because now we are advertising nationally. So that's the first thing. The second significant thing was around the period that a pool of candidates remained valid for. So it had historically been 6 months where you could place an advert, and people that applied for that advert could then be placed against any vacant funded post that came up during that period. The DPSA said 2 things must change. The first thing that is going to change is that the period that it is going to be valid for is now 3 months. So your validity period has halved, therefore your advertising frequency has doubled. The second thing is that they then also said you have to be very specific in terms of what the job title is, the salary scale, the core functions, the inherent requirements, which are all good, but then the place of work. So you had to, in the advert, you had to define exactly where that post was going to be found. So that reduced our ability to pool, because we were at a point in time able to use similar posts, similar positions to fill. Now we had to get quite specific on what post is being filled where. So you have this change in the policy framework at the same time that the delegations have been lifted from the executive authorities and placed with the Premier. Well, in our instance, it was placed with the Premier. And so this expectation, because everybody was trying to work this out, the expectation was that the Premier was required to sign off on every single post to be advertised in the province. That's what we decided was the wise utilization of the Premier's time. That's what we had to adapt ourselves to. Yeah, it came out, it was signed off by the Minister, the MPSA, so it was a national, and it impacted everybody. They did say OSD is not involved in this. They said that. The reality is that it was, because you still had to get the codes to open up the posts. And in fact, what was even worse is we were having a look at it, looking at it again now, that when somebody left when somebody exited, Purcell automatically froze that post. So you couldn't access it. It was frozen. It was systematically frozen. So that is what happened in that period of time. And you can see then over this period, do this, Chair, that there was a net decrease over the whole period. So the trend was down, 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 down. Till we started to hit, and then just when we thought we were coming right and we were getting on top of this, so because we've got various systems in place, we were then able to get bulk concurrence from the Premier. So we were able to say, these are all the posts that have come vacant. Please will you sign off once and for all? So instead of him getting 200 individual applications, we would give one single application with 200 posts that were coming vacant or had become vacant, and then they were able to go and do the advertisement. Remember, we required that before we could even place the advert that requires a 2-week delay to get into the DPSA vacancy circular nationally. Then the Pension Law Amendment Act arrived in, when was this? September 2024. And it created a whole lot of panic because people were uncertain about what was or wasn't going to happen to their pension and how they were or they were not going to be able to access the resignation benefits on resignation because of the two-pot system. And so we saw a spike in resignations between kind of June, July to September, because after September it was done. If you resigned after that, you went to the two-pot system. And so we saw a significant number of an unusual number of resignations that were driven by the Pension Laws Amendment Act regulations. So you can see that when all of that settled down in around about October, November of last year, our practice was basically had adapted itself to start being able to attract, retain, and fill more posts than people were exiting. So finally, we started to find that balance around about October and November last year. The DPSA Circular 14 of 2025 was the best document that we could see because it basically withdrew all the restrictions that had been placed by DPSA Circular 49. Didn't change the public service regulations. Public service regulations stayed as is, but we were then able to have our full delegated authority bestowed back on the minister, and we were then able to do what we needed to do when we needed to do it. And as I showed previously, we have been now able to, over the last couple of months, consistently replace more people than we are losing. And that's why the worm now starts to go up. So that gives us, I think, a little bit of a snapshot and a picture. So then you may or may not, our internal management system for posts. So our approved post list is called the APL. And it is a resource allocation and management tool, which its purpose is to ensure the equitable distribution of compensation budget on a standard costing basis with an appropriate mix of staff across all of the cost centers. Now that's a mouthful because we've got 32,000 people that are in different mixes all over the place across 550 cost centers. And so it builds itself up from those specific cost centers based on the local needs and the local availability of resources. So this is a little bit explaining in numbers what it does. But what we do with the APL is we say, here's your budget of 100 Rand. We will allow you, this is pre the impact of austerity. We will allow you to advertise posts up to 105 Rand because there are going to be constantly people leaving. So therefore, we want to create a pool that you can reach into so that you can consistently spend your 100 Rand. So the APL isn't about saying you've got 105 Rands worth of budget. Now you could, no. The APL is about you get flexibility to be forward thinking in your planning. What happened and what you can see now is that we discovered that our full rate, because of this, dropped substantively. So our full rate, our general full rate dropped from around about 95% down to about 91%. So what we did at the beginning of this year is we said, okay, we're going to change what we call the attrition rate from 5% to 10%. So we've now said to everybody, guys, instead of being restricted in the APL to advertise 105 Rand on your 100 Rand budget, you can now advertise 110 because you're only filling at 90. So we have created an additional pool of posts that we can now advertise and fill up to the budget that we've got. And that's created quite a lot of flexibility. And that's what this demonstrates, to say it's not the same thing. We are comparing posts with post mixes, with full rates, with attrition rates. They are different things. We must not conflate them. And often, even internally, we conflate those things when we try and understand what vacancy rates are, where and when, what our full rates are. So what we've said is this is quite an important, yes, sorry, this one. So this is our APL broken into our clinical categories and our non-clinical categories. The pre-austerity, the 35,000, was the potential that we had in 2023. So this was the staff mix that we could afford. This is, and that's what we had. When austerity came, we had to then reshape our budget envelope and therefore our affordability envelope. So even though we were losing people, we still then had to cut the APL, because on top of the APL is the potential to advertise additional posts. So we had to cut the APL by 860 posts across the various categories. Post-austerity, where we've increased the attrition rate, we've now been able to add back 591 posts into the APL. So that creates the opportunity for people to advertise more posts than they were previously allowed to advertise, based on the affordability framework and based on a policy shift that we've taken based on the evidence. And what we wanted to show here is in terms of the ratios, so pre and post austerity. Let's do this. So you can see the mix of where posts have been added back. And I must add that we run a fundamentally decentralized system. So there are 551 cost centers across the depth and the breadth of the organization that have allocated budget and have teams that make decisions together on what is the most appropriate staff mix across all of these categories to fulfill the obligations that they have, both in terms of fill and filling, but also in terms of what we would like to advertise, what we would like to do in the future. And you can see it's about 2/3 clinical, 1/3 non-clinical, but ancillary and maintenance, in fact, everything like that supports our clinical service. So that will include cleaning, that will include administration, that will include asset clocks. It will include portering services. It will include laundries. It will include maintenance. And so there's been a slight shift between non-clinical and clinical. And you will see, as expected, that nursing, because it's the single largest categorization of staff that we have, we're a nurse-driven service, that there is a slight decrease and a impact on nursing across the whole organization. So that's what our APL shows us. And so there we show that there's a slight increase. So now I've told you the story. Now, what do we have to do to streamline the posts? So I've demonstrated hopefully a little bit of what we've done. So I've said that the DPSA regulations require that we advertise posts nationally, and the period for the selection pool decreased from 3 to 6 months. The long and the short of it is these changes increase the number of applicants and increase the frequency of advertising placement. Now, remembering that the people management teams have also been impacted in terms of being able to provide the support. So there is pressure everywhere in the system. So what we had to do is adapt these changes. We required adaptive and agile practice and to further invest in technology. So filling of posts is everybody's business. So this is not just a people management function. If you're looking for a team, you'll get together as a team and you will assess the CVs together as a team as part of a process so that we can. So it is understood that the filling of posts this is not about pointing fingers. This is about coming together to solve the problems. Advertising is also now more predictable. So we know when we have to advertise, there's a routine that comes in to this. We are finding that posts are now being pooled together between facilities and advertised across a geographical ecosystem. So as part of the culture, we've said we can't be siloed. We can't be reductionist in our view that this is my budget. I only need this. I'm not going to have a conversation with my neighbor. I'm not going to pool the resources. We are pooling resources. So when I talked about the issue here is about the place of work. You can expand the place of work a little bit beyond the 4 walls. You can say you can work in a hospital, but service a sub-district 2, as an example. And so that allows us to pool and advertise across geographical ecosystems. So examples of this are, for example, the Cape Winelands district and the Worcester Hospital are peas in a pod. So they come together to get through the administrative churn to move things forward. The interview process is now being streamlined. So there, as I was saying, we're bringing people together to do this, and we're pooling across the facilities and the ecosystems. We've created a number of additional technology tools. And so we have SharePoint sites that are set up that they capture and share the data. We use online portals for assessments of candidates, and these have improved efficiency and process, but have also shown us collectively where the pressures are so that we can then step in and help where we've identified specific things. And so it has taken time to embed practice. I spoke earlier about change management, but this has taken time to embed in practice. But we are seeing the stabilization in headcounts. And since April, we've seen those entering the service exceed those exiting the service, which is, it's positive. We're not back to where we were, and I think it's going to take a long time to get back to where we were, but we are seeing change. So what are our key messages? So, but we took the headcount at 1 November 2023. We took the headcount at the end of the austerity time, and National Treasury was saying 1,500. We actually lost 1,862 posts. That's what happened. Because we have taken the strategic decision to protect our APL and our posts in the 2026 year, we've been able to add 591 posts into our additional posts into our interviewable pool. Let's call it like that. We've allowed this has happened because we've allowed an increase in the attrition rate. And so therefore there are more posts that are being filled at any given stage that are in the churn. I think we've got about 3,000 odd posts in some level of recruitment and selection. We've had put a range of measures in place to streamline the filling posts within the existing policy parameters, and I've spoken a bit about those. And the final results of all of these measures are that we are now seeing this increase month to month in the filling of post numbers. We were watching ups and downs, but now we've, over the whole system, as we look at it, we are seeing positives come up throughout the whole system. And we've been able to, as best as possible, protect our clinical posts, including nursing posts. But what's also interesting is when we ask our decentralized decision makers to make the decisions, they look at it from a whole system perspective, and they don't just say we are going to protect nurses at the expense of physiotherapists or porters, or we're going to protect medical officers as the expenses of nurses. That's not how it's done. We look at it from a whole system perspective to say what is the right mix within the envelope that we've got to deliver the service that we are being asked to deliver. And so this is a where we are at the moment in terms of how we now measure things. So we measure our fill rate as a percentage of the budget. So your expenditure as a percentage of the, or your fill rate as an expenditure as a percentage of the budget. And so we are at 96.9 over the full period. You can see from April, we went from 96.6, we're stable in May, and then 97, 97.11, 97.15. So again, our filling rate is showing, and our expenditure is therefore increasing. And you can see that we have focused on clinical. Clinical sits over the period of 97.21% and non-clinical at 95.87%. So there is still this bias towards ensuring that clinical is filled, but we don't forget the non-clinical because we take a system view on this. So in conclusion, I think we have a clear implementation strategy as captured in our framework for action. We have a clear people strategy that underpins our strategic framework for action over the next 3 years. We've taken responsible budget decisions to stabilize our workforce numbers. We can't spend money that we don't have. It's as simple as that. We are voted a budget and we must manage within that budget parameter. And that includes staff, that includes goods and services and accruals, that includes capital, that includes transfers. And so we've taken the responsible budget decisions to stabilize our workforce numbers. And we have a managerial commitment and the tools to continue stabilizing our workforce numbers in a responsible manner over the MTF period. So again, this is about balancing a whole system within the boat and the budget that we have. Chairperson, I wish to thank you and the committee for affording us the opportunity to present.
Mr. K, thank you very much for a detailed, mouthful presentation. Member Walters, we recognize your new presence. And but just for the record, can you, as new as you look?
Chair, apologies, I got stuck in seems to have been an accident on the road. But yeah, Thomas Walters, member of the committee.
Thank you, Member Walters. Members, there we have it. Very detailed, very technical for me, especially. But I've made my notes. I'm now going to give to the members an opportunity to make comments, ask questions, and anything for clarity. The floor is yours, members. I see no hands. Oh, right here, Member Walters.
Yes, Chair, I think there's the picture that I'm getting is massive budgetary pressures, processes, and I think we might need to have a chair separate discussion about processes, legislation, things that constrains effective service delivery, and of course without compromising the underlying logic of why some of these laws are in place. But some of them I can hear the impact on your decision making, and I would imagine unforeseen consequences by whoever made the regulations. Really, you had to do footwork that I think the Springboks will need on Saturday against the All Blacks. But I also find I was really interested in call it the sounds like an algorithm you use to predict how you can mitigate the impact of job losses in terms of your advertising there. So I think to me the substantive question is, given the concerns of churn in the department, I think there's some issues about people leaving the service, age-wise, prospects elsewhere, whatever the case might be, that comment there since April 2025, we've seen those entering the service exceeding those exiting. So would you describe that as and it might be a bit early, but do you think that is going to reverse the kind of, or is it, do you foresee this reversing the trend of a loss of, call it, crucial skills, the kind of churn that we've picked up elsewhere in oversight visits? Because I think if that's the case, it's immensely promising, and then I really think it's something that the department can celebrate. I mean, obviously it's a bit early to say, but maybe if I can pose the question more crisply, if this continues, will that reverse the, call it, long-term strategic concerns that we've picked up in terms of human resources? Do you think that's, I assume it won't do it on its own, but do you think if it's a sustainable picture that that sort of, well, the reversal of the churn, do you think that is in fact reversing the churn of staff? Do you think it is something that, I don't believe in silver bullets, but this looks like it could be a silver bullet? Or am I being too ambitious or excited about this?
I see Member Stevens. I think I'm going to go 3 questions at a time and then we can come back. Member Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the updated program that you guys gave this morning. I just got 2 or 3 questions. The first one, how does the updated departmental strategy address the challenges of staff shortages and capacity constraints in our public health services? And the second one is, how is the department addressing staff morale, burnout, and mental health challenges among our healthcare workers? And then the last one for now, is there a retention strategy in place to curb the migration of healthcare professionals to the private sector or abroad? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Stevens. I think, Minister, I'm going to curb it at that for now. Over to you and your team, Minister.
First go at it. So the first thing is, the Department of Health and Wellness is quite different to other Western Cape government departments for the most part, in that we're such a big system. So churn or attrition is a natural thing that will happen all the time. People will retire, people will resign. But because we're such a large department, the scale of that churn is rather large. So that's something that has always happened and, continued. But what happened in austerity was that the policy requirements that were placed on us by the DPSA regulations made it extremely difficult to recruit following that churn. And that is what is different. Plus the 2-pot system, which then meant we had an unusual number of staff exiting during those few months. But because of the policy constraints, it was harder to then fill those vacancies than what it was in the past. We understand that during austerity, and I mean South Africa had a fiscal emergency, those things were designed to slow down recruitment in the public service. And they were very successful at doing that. The problem is in a large system like health, it is not practical because we're a frontline service delivery department. And so this is why it put enormous strain on the department to be able to do what it needs to do in terms of stabilizing and making sure that we can fill those posts that we had budget to fill. And that was part of the frustrating thing and something we've shared with the committee multiple times. But we've taken considered action in how we deal with it. And also some of our own internal strategic decision making, like on the attrition rates, which is now helping us, as you can see, to reverse some of those issues. And on one of those earlier slides, you'll see the Western Cape is doing quite well in that respect on an issue that is affecting all provinces. Then to Honourable Stevens, we do have staff morale and retention strategies in place, and we're very happy to share those. I'll ask colleagues just to talk a little bit to that. In the tremendous amount of work that goes on to make sure that all our staff members are valued and are supported in the Department of Health and Wellness.
It's okay. Anybody want to compliment the minister?
Always compliment the minister. Yeah, so Member Walters, I do believe it is sustainable. We don't see any other policy shocks on the horizon. So that, yeah, touch wood. Yeah, we didn't see any policy shocks on the horizon in October, or in October 2023, or August, September 2023. I think without overcommitting, I think we can probably start finding even more process efficiencies as we invest more in technology. So one of the issues that we have is because we've got a high churn of applications, people are still having to go through each and every one of those applications. We believe that we can find some ways to accelerate that by using things like AI, so that instead of having 1,000 posts to look at, it comes down and says, actually, these are the 10 that you should be looking at. And that starts to reduce that churn. And the process you still have to follow the recruitment and selection process. But we believe that will, we start exploring that a little bit more aggressively as part of one of our priority pillars. I believe that we will gain efficiencies. I think the other really important thing is in this adjustment budget. So the Minister of Finance did announce that there was going to be a fairly substantial injection into the health system over the next 3 years. We don't know the exact numbers yet, but we think it is going to be relatively substantial. And we will then be required to invest that in the things that matter and the things that count. And so within the strategy then underlies specific areas that we would want to strengthen across the whole system. We haven't completed our resource strategy that supports the framework. We've got policy decisions that need to be cleared, and then obviously there's implementation that's going to follow with that. But yes, I think it is positive, and we are cautiously optimistic. Remain cautiously optimistic. I think Member Stevens. So a health system, almost by default, says that more people will solve the problem, and therefore I need more staff. I need more staff, and I need more money. And that is as a result of the need and the burden that is coming through our facilities. And that leads and links very much to staff morale as well as how do we keep people in the service. And so there's this intrinsic link between all of those. And we are all human beings. And when we feel the strain on something and that it becomes too much for us, we shut ourselves down. But when we reach out to somebody else and say, can we try and solve this problem together? Actually, it lifts our individual morale, and we can start then troubleshooting and finding different solutions. And that's why we spoke so much about investing in the system deep and the interconnectedness of by and between people, that you are not alone. We are in this together. And when there are times and places when you need real help, we're able to come as a collective to support people. And so it's not by mistake that we have employee well-being as a priority number one. That is about social, both physical and mental well-being, and about creating an environment that is supportive. It's not by accident that we talk about organizational values and culture. It's not by accident that we talk about opportunities for training and development. These are all part of our strategy to retain people, to lift the morale, and by retaining we plug the shortages, so to speak. That's not to say that there aren't places in the system where people are under extreme strain. That is factual, and whenever you go and whenever we go out, we see it. We experience the almost unending wave of people that are coming through our facilities, and the staff on the front line are those that bear the absolute brunt of that, and we are enormously mindful of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the responses. Member Van Vogel, you are next. Member Van Vogel, you're not audible.
Am I audible, Chair?
Now you can go, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Chair. Let me first welcome the presentation of the department. Chair, mine, if you look at slide 4, Western Cape Government Strategy, the life course approach. Can the department explain in simple terms this life course approach in context of the life realities of the poor people in the Western Cape, where millions are unemployed, face with endless social ills? For me, I think an ordinary unemployed person, interest is more, how is the department working with other sister departments to address these challenges? Then secondly, Chair, on slide 5, the strategy in nutshell. What does the service redesign entail, and how will it address the ongoing challenges of patients sleeping on floors in Mitchells Plain and in Khayelitsha District Hospital? My questions is based on life experience and the unemployed and most vulnerable people there outside who need assistance when it comes to our sector, the health sector. Then lastly, Chair, on slide 10, the theory of change, people strategy. Please tell us more about this theory of change. And I'm asking this in the context of staff and bed shortages across our healthcare facilities in the province. How are you dealing with that challenge? Are you going to increase staff numbers? Or because I don't understand, because the problem is we are short of staff. That's one of the big issues. Thank you, Chair.
Member Van Vogel, just for my understanding as well, when you refer to the unemployed, are you referring within the medical space? Like people unemployed in the province, or people unemployed with some sort of medical qualification, or somebody who can work within the medical space? Just for clarity.
No, Chair. I'm speaking in general as community, as the people of the Western Cape.
Oh, all right. Okay. Thank you. Over to the responses. Thank you.
All right. All right. So on slide 4, this is a visual representation of the provincial strategic plan and the transversal nature of the various departments and how they all fit together to take a life course approach and a whole of a society approach so that residents of the Western Cape can live a life that they value. It is so it's how we all work together and fit together, overlaid with health strategic planning over the same 5-year period, which is start well, live well, and age well. So if we have a look here, in the first line, that is the life course. So conception, early years, when a baby is born, to them becoming a child, to an adolescent, growing up to become an adult, and then to become an elderly person, as Mr. K nicely put it, in the twilight years of their life. So in that course of life, there are many things that as human beings we need and that we interact with that is provided from various different places. So it's about how do we think about all of these things to put them together. So, for example, you'll see in the next line, it's family, the importance of family, especially in the early years of a child's life. And I would argue also in the later years of one's life. Then we see community, the important role of communities in helping each of us as individuals in our life course. This is overlaid by the public spaces that we use to live our lives. And you see them workplace, the places where we live, work, and play, and how this fits also into our life course. Then in the next layer, we're looking at services and infrastructure to be able to support families and communities and workplaces for children in their early years, for young children, adolescents, adults, and the elderly. And in there, it's housing. It is how people get around. How do they move around? How are goods and services moved around? And then how are businesses supported? And then in the line above that, you'll see services that government provides that links in with each of these. So you'll have your basic services. So there you'll see electricity, water, food, and nourishment. You'll have social development. You can see that's linked in to family, community, mobility, workplace, and so on. Health also linked into each of these things, and health's role in helping a person throughout their life course approach, including families, communities, and to make sure that adults are healthy and can thrive and participate in the economy, for example. Education's role in each of these things, helping children to learn and be able, again, to participate in the economy. Government's role in mobility and infrastructure to provide schools and clinics, etc. And you'll see a big green bubble, which is the economy, and you'll see all the linkages to government to help the economy and businesses to grow and create jobs, and how that fits into the workplace, not only from an individual level, but also from a family and community level, and how infrastructure supports the economy and business, but so does education, health, and social development. And then right at the top is overlaid with things like the climate, ecosystems, and the resources. And that's how we put it all together in this broader picture. So we can't take any of these in isolation. Health has its role to play, but we're also interconnected, which is why we're serving on, for example, the Safety Council in our projects on Planet Youth. We're in the Educated, Healthy, Caring Society Cabinet work stream, because we fit together with education, we fit together with social development, and we fit together with agriculture on nutrition and things like that. So it's about trying to shift how government traditionally works, which is in silos, and rather take a whole life course approach and a whole of society approach, because we think that that allows us to be much more mindful in how we deliver our services and how we respond to the residents of the province that we serve. So I hope that gives an explanation for what this means and how, as government as a whole, we put all these pieces together, and from our perspective, so that children can start well, adults live well, and the elderly can age well. If I may, I'm going to hand over on the service redesign question. And then maybe we can, and on the theory of change. Thank you.
Thank you. And Member Windvogel, I'm not going to be able to articulate and explain this as well as Dr. Kluti is able to explain. So you will forgive me. I think I just want to start in terms of, I think Member Walters said there's no single silver bullet to solving any specific problem. And that's why we've created a people strategy with the 11 priorities, because we're talking specifically about the people strategy today, that underpins our organizational strategy, which is about the system hardware, which I spoke about, the building blocks, but also that investment in values, cultures, and norms that manifest themselves in behaviors. So how does that translate into the lived experience of those that use our services? And I think that's the question that you ask. And there are a number of examples where there is really positive impact. There are also a number of examples where there isn't such positive impact. And I think those come into our learning system so that we can constantly push the edge to do things better over time. So by doing the right things, doing them right, but constantly learning, that's how we move the system forward. That's how we improve the services. But if you go to Mitchell's Plain CHC right now, there are going to be a lot of people standing at the door looking for service. That's just what's going to happen. If we don't invest in the social determinants of health, if we don't curb in the policy space the use of guns, the availability of alcohol, you can go and stand in Tygerberg EC on Friday night. You can go and stand in Mitchell's Plain EC on Sunday morning, and you're going to see the consequences and the repercussions of choices that individuals have made that us as a health department, and particularly our staff, are faced with on a daily basis. And that's why I appreciate how Minister Wenger painted what it actually means to have a whole of society approach supported by a whole of government approach, where individuals have agency. I can make healthy choices myself. It helps if it's communicated to me correctly. So don't smoke. I can still smoke, but don't smoke. Don't vape. I was listening on the way to the radio this morning. There's a conversation in the UK about putting in legislation that bans under 16s from drinking energy drinks and using vapes. You go to any school at the moment, they're drinking energy drinks and they're using vapes. And that's not just the children, that's still. So this is about creating the agency that each and every one of us know that needs to make healthy decisions. But Member Windvogel, you are so right that it's very, very easy to say I'm going to make the right health choices and decisions in Constantia, as opposed to where I might find myself in Nyanga or Guguletu. The social determinants are different. And that's why it is incumbent on us to apply these principles of equity, where we must invest in those places and those areas that are socially disadvantaged. But we can't do that alone. We have to do that with communities. So I would have spoken about doing this with our patients, with our communities, the roles of clinic committees. There's a role for the private sector to be played here from an access perspective. There are multiple role players that need to understand what their respective contributions are to improving the overall health and well-being of our society. And that is what we're trying to do. That is the strategy that underpins how we must all move together to mobilize together with that desired outcome, to thrive together better with a natural world. I hope I've answered. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. K. I don't see any other hands, so I will give it a shot. I have three questions, and that is just based for my own understanding in terms of what we experience, Minister, when we go out to these facilities. And one or two of my questions are general. Firstly, the two-pot system. You know, the uncertainties regarding that, and normally in other fields of work, when people are not sure on their own future, they resign. And now my question, based on the resignations within the health sector, do we find that people are coming back because they've got their lump sums and they're still underage? They can still go another 2 to 3 years, like, you know, in engineering, the engineers resign and they come back as consultants, you know, and due to their skills, we employ them back again, you know, on a consultancy basis. Do we find that this has happened within the medical field due to the uncertainties regarding the two-pot system? And secondly, the pool system, you know, where people are in the pool for 6 months, now reduced to 3 months. Is that system based on automatically based on the number of those who've applied for the post that has been advertised, or are they ranked as per their performance in the interviews, so then they get pulled? That is my second one. And the last one, we applaud the turnaround in filling these posts. My question is then, because this is the sense that we're getting, some facilities, they give us the sense that if 3 people either resigned or they went for greener pastures or they've been transferred, when they get their share of the filling of posts, then it's only 1 instead of 3, you know, that they're aware of that has resigned. But they are now only been given 1, you know, at a specific point when you guys are dealing with the filling of posts. Now, my question is, when we deal with filling of posts, do you as a department look at, when you deal, let's say it's Khayelitsha, you're going to fill a post in Khayelitsha, and you're aware that 3 resigned or there are 5 posts, do you fill all 5? Or would you then deal with Khayelitsha must get, Worcester must get, and they would then get their fair share and the total filling in the next round? Because they keep on telling us, we only got 1 instead of the 3 that is left, you know, so how does that work? Thank you. That's my mouthful. Let you go first, Mr. K, this time around.
I appreciate the delegation. So the two-pot system, I actually.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you, Chair. So I think anecdotally, we are seeing people come back into the system. But they are coming back through a recruitment and selection process. I don't think we've necessarily done a specific data-driven investigation. But we have started to get quite a bit of value out of our exit interviews. So we're getting a better understanding of why people are exiting the system, where they're willing to have that conversation with us. And that allows us to drive some of our retention strategies. The reality with the two-pot system, as best as I could work out, was if you resigned after the two-pot system, you could only ostensibly take one part of the two pots, as opposed to prior to the two-pot system, where if you resigned, you could draw your entire pension and then choose to reinvest it somewhere else. I must say, Member Walters, there is a policy impact that is coming up that when you prompted me with this question, because as part of the fiscal framework, it is mooted and it is budgeted for that people are going to be allowed to take early retirement without a penalty. That's a policy. It takes us almost back to 1996, where there was an ability for mass resignations. So that is something that is potentially coming down the line. It's stuck a little bit in the bargaining chambers at the moment. And so there's a bit of frustration with the DPSA and with the Treasury, but that could impact us, and that could have an impact on a brain drain. But that said, again, I haven't been as long in this game as Dr. Maki or Dr. Mabuda, but I know that we've always had a sense that our nursing, we're going to lose the grey matter in our nursing, and yet somehow we always managed to grow additional timber and invest. And so I think the succession planning and our focus on succession planning will help us mitigate against that particular risk. I think on the pooling, so we only accept, we do a recruitment and selection process. And so people will go through a recruitment and selection process, and then we'll say this person is suitable for the job, but this person is maybe in the interview, this person is more suitable. And so when we go to the next person down in the pooling, they have been found to be suitable for the post. It's not just a case of willy-nilly pushing people everywhere. There's reasons why we have the regulations. We must comply with those regulations, and we do comply with those regulations. So your last question around, so thank you for the applause. We appreciate it, and we will convey those thanks, because it does sometimes feel like a very thankless job when you are in an administrative churn the whole time, and your heart sinks when somebody says, I've just resigned, because you know the delay that it's going to take, that's going to happen there. But I think the ability to fill posts is linked to the resource availability. And so what your experience is, you're seeing the lived reality when somebody says, we lost 3 people. That's true. You lost 3 people. The money that you've got back and the decisions that have been made is that we're going to be able to only replace one of those 3 people. The work doesn't change. If anything, the work has gone up, and that's really, we've got to navigate those particular tensions. I'll give you an interesting example that's just happened, was in the process of happening, around how the thinking has changed. So there is an acknowledgement that there is a need for a urologist in the Metro West ecosystem. That post sits at Grooterskloof. But Eerste Rivier, and I think it's Khayelitsha, have got some flexibility and availability in their budgeting, and they would therefore like to fund that post so that the whole ecosystem can get the benefit of a urologist. Now, that means that the person might be employed at Grooterskloof, but is going to be working in the platform so that people don't then have to come all the way to Grooterskloof to see a urologist. They can be seen at Eerste Rivier, Khayelitsha, or Michael M, for example, because that is part of the ecosystem. And so that is an example of how different thinking has different benefits and different results. I can also give another example where we put the patient at the center. We went to Ceres, and the Children's Trust are also looking at from a systemic perspective, and they have been assisting with developing infrastructure beyond Red Cross. And so they've put in a burns unit, a burns bath at Ceres, because that's where some of the demand is. And the change in the patient journey from somebody who has to be separated because of their economic circumstances, have to be separated from their child for up to sometimes 2 weeks at a time because they're having to be dressed and seen at Red Cross, is now 20 minutes away from the service that has been deployed elsewhere. And so that is an example of collaboration by and between ourselves and others that improve the patient experience. And with that comes staff, and part of that is actually training. So there are a whole lot of our staff that are now being trained in burns dressings and wound care, so that skill is now being decentralized. And in fact, the specialist from Red Cross is coming out and actually delivering that training in person. And then there's also used technology for refreshment of that training. And I think there's something like 15 odd people in that particular geographical area that are receiving this more specialized training, because with burns, it's my understanding is that the first hour or two are so critical to be able to clean the wound properly to prevent secondary infection. And if you've got to wait 18 hours before you get admitted to Red Cross with burns, that the outcome is not going to be as favorable as if you're able to clean that and then transfer the patient in a more sterile environment where it exceeds your capability to render safe clinical care. And so those are some examples of how we use our resources, and other people complement our resources to create capacity in the service. Thank you, Chairperson.
Dr. Mabuda, you wanted to add? All right.
Point.
And then I'll come to member.
So Chair, this is, what we've been presenting this morning, and what we're trying to say is that through our budget decisions in this current financial year, you will now start to see that shift. So when you go to the facility and they say, well, we've lost 4 posts, we're only getting 1 back, well, now here we're getting 3 back. And I think that is clear in the numbers here. So you'll start to see quite a big difference at the facilities, because we've made these strategic decisions to be able to add more back from those that we weren't able to previously. Also, just on the pooling, with the 3 months rule, because the number of applications is substantially more for each post, it takes longer to do all the processing of those things. And sometimes those 3 months is not enough to be able to do that. So then it expires and you have to start all over again. And so that's part of the difficulty and the tremendous manpower that's required to now deal with what the implications of these regulations and policy decisions mean. So,
actually, you touched the part I wanted to emphasize, that the pooling, though it helps because of the volume, you might find that there are other other applications that they wouldn't have finalized by the time they did the whole process. So, but on the other side, there's also an advantage in that from the numbers that they've selected, if there is a vacancy in the next hospital, they just pull from that particular interview, which is actually assisting. But the last point that I wanted to emphasize on was the question that you have raised here, that do these people come back? Yes, we are seeing a number of these people coming back because, well, they realize that, well, I've left, but I'm still have 5 years or 10 years to work. They come back in the system, and if they're still employable, they are being employed. Yeah.
Member Walters, round 2.
Okay, we're essentially talking systems theory bottlenecks here, and you're applying it now on you applied it on the recruitment and advertisement process, and in obviously a very constrained policy framework that disturbs me, some of the things that I heard in terms of its actual helpfulness, but that's a debate for another day. In terms of resignations, have you looked at how that can be process-wise made smoother to help alleviate the bottleneck? Now, ideally speaking, in an ideal world, you have 3 months to advertise, people time their resignations, along with you being able to advertise for a position so you don't have vacancies appearing. It's sort of in an ideal world, everyone will plan their lives according to the system, and obviously that doesn't happen. But is there anything you've done at looking at managing resignations in the sense of the contracts, in terms of notice periods, in terms of interventions, perhaps in timing resignations more appropriately as a mechanism to help alleviate the bottleneck? That's actually just purely for my interest. And then the other, you mentioned transversal, and Chair, this is something we've touched on in the committee as well, transversal solutions that you mentioned one now in terms of the sharing of a urologist. To what extent is a hospital transversal, or any call it a service or point of service, a transversal point where exactly what you were referring to, there's a conversation taking place locally with municipalities, with other departments in terms of managing that load? Now, I know the department, a lot of what we've seen, a lot of the thinking of whole of government and whole of society seems to be coming from the health department. But just to maybe illustrate what I'm saying, we were at Grabouw, Chair, you will recall, we were at a fairly overrun clinic there, with vacancies, the kind of thing that you were referring to. And I also recall distance being an issue. And what the thought occurred to me, would getting housing for people there help alleviate the morale, lessen the resignations? And then my next thought was, well, that sounds like a municipal issue. And I'm talking specifically for staff. Yeah, that's where the municipality can get on board. And my next question then was, is there a conversation? Is that the kind of thing that's been taken up? So I think maybe, Chair, maybe to add to that, there's system shocks that came in here. There's one aspect of the human impact that's being managed, the vacancy impact that's being managed here. There's I think what was mentioned earlier about early retirement there, I can just imagine that's not something the system itself can look forward to. But there's also, once the economy improves, once we have good financial management in place, there's also investment that needs to take place to expand the system itself. And I think the important thing for me is if the health department is one part of the picture of health. There has to be a transversal, very localized, because each area is going to differ. There has to be a localized whole of government and whole of society approach as well. That's not just limited to whole of society within a provincial government. And I know it's a fairly wide-ranging set of comments and questions that I'm posing, but I'm actually looking at what the thinking is. I want to get a sense of the thinking, where you are on that, because I do think as politicians, it's the kind of thing we need to take up. Thanks.
Member van Manen, we've asked all your questions. Can I just also, narrow it down what Member Walters have alluded to? For instance, in Grabouw, they raised the issue that people come as far as Villiersdorp, to go to Grabouw. And we then also In some cases, there are issues where, especially in specialized wards, we see the empty beds. As we go around, we see the empty beds, but EC, is chock-a-block full. So then the question always arises: how can one balance that? There are empty beds upstairs, but at EC they overflowing. So immediately that tells us there's a shortage of nursing staff, etc. But those beds, those empty beds, it bothers.
And then my minister will come in and save me with the bits and pieces that I've missed. So there was quite a lot that you asked there. So I'm just trying to frame my thoughts a little bit. I think
I didn't want to stop him. He's my senior.
It's the same problem. So I want to just say the resignations. So the only ones that we can really plan are the retirements. So when we have, for example, we've got one at the moment where I know I've got a senior manager who reaches the age of 65 at the end of March, and we've already got a long list. In fact, I think, we've got a long list. We've completed the advertisement period. We will complete the recruitment and selection process within the next probably 2 months, so that we can then find a successful candidate. And when that person leaves on the 31st of March, we'll be able to bring somebody in, and so that's well planned. But as for a person who resigns out of the blue, the regulation says you must give 30 days notice. That's it, 30 days. So we have, well, that's what it is. So we do have, from a clinical support perspective, we have a number of contracts in place for agency staff. So particularly nurses and medical officers. We have that ability, and with medical officers, we also have commuted overtime, so that they can cover rosters a little bit better, and there's more flexibility. And so that we try and ensure that the continuity of care for the patient continues and isn't impacted at the bedside. But I can't do that kind of thing for CEOs or for administrators. It's there. And so the reality is people have to then kind of cover for each other and work together. And if you start pooling, this notion of pooling is about bringing resources together, not looking at from a reductionist perspective, but looking at it holistically and say, well, actually together we can do things a lot better if we focus on that. So the second thing is around the transversal solutions. So you raise, and so in the presentation, I talk about the necessity that we work together in local geographical areas to understand the context. Now, realistically, for a government, our closest local geographical area would be a sub-district, because it aligns with municipal boundaries. For the individual, it actually starts at a household, as a family unit that forms part of a community. And your community then ultimately builds itself up to a sub-district, and then to a district, and then provincially. So while we are trying to guide the individual, the person at the household, I think our collective power comes together at a municipal space. And so any conversations that one has to be having has to include, from a whole of government perspective, it should be DSD, it should be education, it should be health, it should be the municipality, because the municipality is actually the core function of holding all of this together. It needs to include the police at a minimum, and it's pretty useful if you have the business community actually having conversations in that space as well. So workplace representation there, and from there we can kind of plan a little bit better together. So we were at oh, I've just forgotten. I want to say Sarin, but it wasn't Sarin. We were in Knysna this last Friday, and we were taken to the little community just outside of Kirland.
Craigs.
Yes, thank you, Jay. The Craigs.
You owe me coffee for that.
Your coffee at the petrol, the petrol just in front of the Craigs. But it was fascinating because we were reflecting. It's a relatively small clinic in a relatively small community, but it's beautifully laid out. But the conversation that they said to us is that the municipality now wants to add another 1,500 houses. So what is the knock-on impact for that? The one that possibly gives me more palpitations is around how we plan and how we integrate that planning with education. Because, for example, in that community is a primary school. We're going to add 1,500 houses. Where the kids going to go when they get to high school? And how do we then integrate and plan that together? Because then the question is going to come to legislature to say, well, education needs to build a high school in that area, but we need to build a bigger clinic. There's competition for scarce resources, and so planning together becomes kind of fundamental, so that we layer ourselves in that. Oh, you're going. I know you're going to add.
Just to add,
sorry.
To add to that is the strategic plan in the Department of Infrastructure to create a single view of infrastructure pipeline. So that's led by Minister Simmers, and that's to precisely put all of these pieces together to see in the longer term what is the pipeline and whether anything is missing, as it were. And so that's sort of layering it in multiple different ways, and it might be worth, I'm not sure if you're on those committees, to have a look into the structure that have been formed to do that. And health does sit, so we're a kind of ad hoc member of the Interministerial Committee on Infrastructure, as and when health infrastructure is involved.
So then there's a third, which I think the third thing. So what I want to talk a little bit about your experience in Rabo, and maybe your experience in all in many places when you see. So and you spoke about earlier, Member Walters, you spoke about system theory and bottlenecking. And I was actually at Mitchell's Plain a little while ago. We were talking to how they manage the EC, and it's there's this production line where the end point is the start point for the next thing. So on any production line, the ways to manage it is either get stuff off the back end or prevent stuff from coming into the front end. Everything else is just you trying to manage the speed and the variability of what happens. And so because of this interconnectedness, you may very well see a blockage in the EC. But that's not the reason, and an empty bed. That's not the reason for it. The reason may very well be is that the ambulance and the PTV or the patient transport or people that are wanting to be discharged and needing to be discharged are not able to get home. And therefore they're occupying a bed, and then it goes back. Or you have a whole lot of people that arrive at an EC simply because there's no after-hour service in a particular area, and they've got they're a green patient, and they're told, if you go to a number of facilities now, you say, green patient, this is how long you're going to wait to be seen by somebody. because you then have an inappropriate mix of people coming in. And so it really is this, you are right, we apply system thinking to solving the problems because they are complex adaptive system. And it by its very nature, complexity means that you don't know what the outcome is going to be. There's no single route to finding a solution. And that is the interconnectedness. And therefore, if you want to try and make a specific intervention in a specific space, be very aware that you're going to have an unintended consequence somewhere else. And always be willing to adapt and learn. Now, that's easy to say from a system theorist perspective, but the person in the EC is feeling a lot of pressure because it doesn't stop. There's just a wave, and then there's anxiety. Please get the person out. I want them into a ward. The ward clerk is saying, I can't take this because the bed is occupied. Why is the bed occupied? Because we're waiting for EMS. Why are we waiting for EMS? Because they're waiting for the police to go and fetch a patient in a red zone. And therefore that resource is taken. And that's that kind of knock-on effect. And so again, I underpin the fact that if we continue to focus on our values, our behaviors, our culture about being connected and being open, we are able to manage those levels of anxiety by and between us. And so that's why you'll then you'll scratch your head and you'll say, but what's happening? I went to George Hospital the one day and they were full. The EC, I've never seen the George Hospital full. An EC, and they had a specific blockage somewhere up the system that had nothing to do with the EC, and that's how you experience. The other reality is every community will come and say, "I want a hospital. I want this." We are not limitless. We are limited by what we can do, and so. You will experience, and I guess this also, Member Windvogel, this answers a little bit of your question about how service design will change it. Service design is around tweaking so that we put the patient at the center, so that people have appropriate access to care as close as we can get them to their houses. And that's what service redesign is. We want to spend time listening to what the EMS guys are able to reflect on, because they are the ones that go into the communities. They are the ones who say, this is what actually is the root cause of a lot of the issues, which can be completely different in a specific geographical area. They can be completely different household to household, road, street to street. And I think a lot of that has been unpacked with the work that the VPU has been doing. Thank you.
Member
I've answered those.
Thank you very much. I think also, just as an aside, an interesting example of that is where I live in Somerset West, the Helderberg Hospital, that built in the 1930s, where the community was, but how the community has evolved and developed over time means that you've now got a hardworking hospital, but it's no longer at all positioned in the space that it needs to be in the center of the community. So, I mean, that's just an interesting one going forward. But my question is not nearly as intricate or as complicated, I hope, with as many moving parts. You were talking about managing the issue of retirement. Something that concerns me enormously is the fact that a very large proportion of nurses are going to be reaching retirement age in the next few years, but there seems to be a big blockage when it comes to training of nurses and the qualification of nurses. And we certainly heard this extensively at Red Cross, where they have very specialized staff. From your perspective, how are you hoping to manage this issue? Because, I mean, if there's a hard cutoff at 65, and I mean, there's obviously financial pressure, so one can't rely entirely on nursing agencies. How is the department intending to deal with this? Because we really don't want to end up with, I think in part what we saw in PAL, with a really good EC that they can only operate 2 beds because they just don't have the staff. And that's a problem. Thanks.
Over to you, Melissa.
So I'll start. So there So there has been an issue with nursing training. And I think it might be useful for the committee to have a briefing on it specifically, because it's quite complicated terrain and there's a lot that's happened over the last decade. A lot of the qualifications were phased out, and they had to be sort of ended by 2019, if memory serves, and then new qualifications coming in. But the certification of those qualifications took long, and so there was a gap in which, you know, you couldn't do the old one, you can't do the new one either. But we have an excellent College of Nursing that is training nurses and nursing specialists. And in fact, we've just had our first cohorts of specialist qualifications and degrees in nursing that graduated just a few weeks ago. So there is a lot of good work and good news in the space. But of course, there's also a timing issue as well. And with the early retirements that could be make it quite difficult for us, these are things that we have to focus on. But I don't know if you want to maybe talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Minister. I think the problem you have raised is true. Like the Minister has said, since December 2019, there has been a period where there were no training, especially for specialist nurses, because of the new qualifications and alignment with the National Qualifications Framework. But fortunately, as Western Cape, we have led in the country because we are now having 7 postgraduate diploma programs accredited, and hence the Minister have just said we have our first graduate in postgraduate diploma graduation last month, where we graduated more than 100 nurses, specialist nurses. Total graduates were more than 400, but of those, more 400, 112, 114 were specialist nurses, which will now start to address some of the challenges, including Red Cross, because with Red Cross specifically, the postgraduate diploma in childcare nursing, it has been problematic because even UCT was not accredited, and they will only start training next year. Yeah, they are accredited this year because of other internal problems within their institution. They will only start training child nursing next year. And the college, we are doing all other PGDs, including critical care. So yes, the challenge was there, but as a province, we are in better position to address those challenges going forward.
Mr. K, follow up.
There we go. Thank you, Chair. I just want to say the future is bright. 8,500 applicants for the Western Cape College of Nursing for next year, and we have around about 500, 400 or 500 accredited capacity. So the future is bright, and that made me feel pretty good when I saw those statistics yesterday. I think the second thing is, so I spoke about collaborative approaches. I've spoken about civil society, spoken about the private sector, higher education. We are collaborating. We have to collaborate with private sector, with the higher education, and that gives us a much better understanding of bringing service needs, training needs, and the available resources to come together so that we benefit the greater country. This is not just about the Western Cape. This is and in fact, somebody reminded us yesterday that actually at Red Cross, this is about training for Africa. It's not just about training for South Africa. This is training much broader than that. So I remain relatively optimistic. I think, yes, I must say I feel a lot more optimistic. There was one thing that was interesting though. So our employee wellness program, I wanted to add. Sorry, this was actually the add-on I wanted to. Our employee wellness program, the highest volumetrics of calls that come through are around financial advice. Because actually, when you think you're going to retire and somebody actually comes and sits down with you and says, okay, are you ready for the financial shock that you are just going to take by taking early retirement? And you do your sums on the back of a cigarette box, you withdraw that resignation letter before you've done it. Because your reality is when you retire, even with long service, you will be lucky to see 40%. 40%, you will be lucky. And that is a big, rude wake up and shock. So a lot of people are very gung-ho, say, yeah, I'm going to take early retirement. I said, have you had a conversation with your advisor? Your advisor. What advisor? You say, all right, here's a number. Start you making utilization of an employee wellness service. And suddenly those people that are very, very gung-ho are not so gung-ho anymore, because it is severe. And it is, I've just, my in-laws retired recently, and despite the advice they chose to take, and it is a real shock to the system. People don't understand exactly what that is until the salary has stopped, and the reality bites. And so, yeah, what people say and what they then invariably do, particularly as they work towards the twilight of their career. The other thing that I will say is that there are allowances within the public service regulation to extend retirement age beyond 65, but it's few and far between. It's not a general practice, but it is a practice that can be deployed if we need to retain a specific specialist service to transfer that skill and that knowledge to those that are coming through, and to support. So often what happens is we'll have a specialist that will retire, but then they will come back on a sessional post, so that they will then be able to cover and assist in the service while it's not their full-time employee anymore, but they are able to provide that cover and that education and knowledge transfer. Thank you, Chair.
Member Van Vogel, you are next.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think I'm partly covered by Mr. K, but I just wanted to check, has the department done a type of research on the reason why we are losing professionals? And perhaps what is the reason, yeah? Then really it is good news. It's a positive sign. The new information when it comes to training professional nurses, because we know whenever we do oversight visits, that's one of the issues raised. You can go to Paarl Hospital, the same problem there. You have bed, but there's no staff, there's no professional nurses, and so on and so on. So I really want to applaud the department when it comes to that part. But and I heard the previous doctor, I can't remember his name, he mentioned something that with this new staff, they are, okay, thank you, Chair, that they are going to look at Red Cross, and I really want you also to put on the second on the list, Paarl Hospital, and then Kylie Charles also there. So I'm just pushing those names up there on the list. But it's really good news to hear that you are busy training nurses, because that is a shortage in the province. Thank you, Chair.
So that is your lobbying list, member, those hospitals.
Yes, Chair.
All right, it's noted. Member, was there a comment, or would you like a response in that regard? Or the training of the professionals? Okay, Mr. K.
So I think this the second two, the training of nurses was a comment. I think the lobbying you've dealt with on the facilities.
Yeah.
But I think the question about losing professionals. So there are a number of reasons. I think what we've started to see is that a lot of people used to just not put a reason down as to why they were leaving. We've now started to see that people are more willing to disclose why they are leaving, and it goes. It's a multi-sectional multitude of reasons and rationalities. And so we are beginning to get an explanation of why and where people are leaving, and we can start using some of that intelligence. So, for example, there are areas in rural where the affordability of housing and rental makes it, even with a 22% rural allowance, makes it very difficult for a person to establish themselves in a community. There are reasons around people schooling. There are reasons around work pressures. I mean, that is a realist, and there are imbalances in pay scales, not within government, but intergovernment. So the municipalities pay more. That's a fact. Whether that is actually more from a package deal perspective or bottom line, that's a different conversation, different debate. But people see a bottom line, and they choose to move on that basis. And then there are certain categories where so paramedics are being poached overseas. We just can't match the dollar kind of opportunity that has been put there. So that there is a targeting on that. And then the other one is, so education is actually quite difficult because of the OSD. So a nurse who wants to do education, well, because there's no OSD dispensation for nursing education, they will receive substantively more by doing their speciality service at the patients. And that's you can understand that's a problem, because we want you to be able to so we want to be able to train as much as you want to be able to serve. So these are the kind of ration and reasons that come up. The only thing I could say, Member Windvogel, is that we are now, with our data-driven analyses, able to start pinpointing specific trends that will emerge in specific areas that will then require us to tailor our responses and our strategy, which may be beyond our own ability to manage and navigate. I do think that there is a positive groundswell that is coming through, where people experience each other and the department differently to other places. And therefore, we are also finding that money isn't necessarily a reason for people to be moving. In fact, I will often rather stay than move to another province or somewhere else into another position if there is a slightly bigger pay package available to them. And that for us is really positive, because that's kind of the system deep investments that I spoke about coming to fruition in terms of retaining people, because it's a nice place to be able to work. It's a nice place to be able to work together with others. Not everywhere, but we are seeing those green shoots. So thank you very much, Chair.
Minister, and to you and the team, we've exhausted our questions. Thank you very much. But let me make use of this opportunity to abuse my chair. Minister, to you and the team, I would like to propose a legacy project for the next 5 years. You know, you can play around with it. In the Garden route, Ito is the only municipality without a hospital. All the other 6 municipalities has got a hospital. And it is something that, with all the challenges, money, budgets, and whatever, but as a team, have it there at the back of your minds. That can be the legacy project for the Western Cape. But Minister, instead of the Tiger Books of this world, Mr. K.
Chair, if I may plant something slightly different, because we were in Bito on Friday. And when we were in the combi driving between Neisner and Plettenberg Bay, Bito, that was the drum that was being beaten, that we need a 90-bed facility. My question to the people in the car was, are there any health beds in Bito? No, there are no public health beds. I said that wasn't the question I asked. There is a facility in Bito. We just can't access it. And so these are the things that we have to think transformationally about how do we create access to safe care for our communities closest to where they live. Maybe a 90-bed facility is not the right answer to configure in that space. How many facilities, if you go to Hermanus, if you go to Vredenburg, how many towns do we have where there is a public and a private hospital that share the same entrance? We are called, as part of our UHC reform, to think differently about how people access services. And Bito is a classic example that when we ask the question slightly differently, maybe there will be a different emergent answer. Because if we're going to build, as Minister was saying, build you a 90-bedded hospital. We can probably build a 90-bedded hospital, but I don't know where the resources are going to come from. So how are we going to operationalize that? Because that means that we're going to take money from Sierra's Hospital, we're going to take money from George Hospital, or we're going to take it out of the PHC platform. That may not necessarily be the right thing for us to be doing from a system perspective with the resources that we've got. And so we temper that conversation to say, what are the alternates to create access to safe clinical care for those of the communities that we serve? Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to share.
Our coffee now changed to a rum and coke. Minister, any closing remarks?
Thanks to the committee for the engagement.
Thank you very much for the insightful presentation. There is tea and coffee outside. We will continue in here gossiping about you, but it will be good news. Thank you very much. Members, we're not going to take a 5-minute break. I know, Member Walters, that was going to be your first proposal. We're not going to take a 5-minute break. All right. Yes. We'll go to. Or is that your?
that came up. Otherwise, I found it highly informative, and my other resolutions I think I've made before in this committee, so I'm not going to repeat myself. That's the one that came up.
The transversal, yeah. Member van Minen?
Thank you. Also, I'd like to follow up on the proposal that we have a briefing on nursing and nursing training. I think that would be very instructive.
Member Van Vogel? Member Van Vogel, you're not audible?
Am I audible, Chair?
You are now. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes. If we can get understanding from the department, update in terms of, because they are saying they are going to disperse those nurses and professionals to the different hospitals. Perhaps I misunderstood them, but that was my understanding. So if we can get an update in terms of how are they going to deal with the appointments at the different hospitals, where are we going to see those type of appointments?
Member Van Vogel, maybe you got it slightly wrong. What was communicated is that the future looks bright. There are about 8,000 applications and there are about 500 and something opportunities. So I don't know whether you want to phrase something around that understanding.
Okay, no, thanks for that clarity, Chair. But
Okay.
I think it's, let us rephrase it then. Because remember, what the doctor, I can't remember his name again.
Dr. Mabuda.
He mentioned something, Dr. Mabuda. He mentioned something about Red Cross is going to get some of those professionals. So I want to understand in terms of after, if you can get an update in terms of the staff component, how many did they employ? Where did they employ them?
All right, member will find a way to phrase that. They have not made any appointments as yet, but we'll find a way to phrase that, like when, how would they deal with it? I think Member Walters, maybe you can assist.
Yeah, I think what we should just have as part of the future report is maybe a comparative progress report in how vacancies are filled and with a geographic breakdown. I think that should cover that.
Are you happy with that phrasing, Member Van Vogel?
100%, yes, Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Member Stevens?
Thank you, Chair. My question would have been the same like Member Van Vogel, because that was also my understanding when the minister said that the future looks bright, and she gave the total of nurses that's going to be replaced very soon in 2026. So yeah, I also would like to know how they're going to do the replacement of the nurses, replacements of the nurses, because yeah, there's like quite a few hospitals that's really in need of hospitals, like also your Karl Bremer Hospital, because I've been there quite a few times in this week and last week. Yes, my son is in hospital with meningitis, and that hospital at the moment are in a very, very poor state. So I would also like to know how they're going to do that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Member. That will be covered in the phrasing of Member Walters. I think that is it. Members, for the resolutions. I'm now going to go to consideration of the committee documents, and I'll start with the minutes of the 6th of August 2025. I know it's been circulated to us. Page 1, minutes of the 6th of August. Member Walters?
Chair, I've read through it. I propose.
Second.
It has been proposed by Member Walters and it is seconded by Member van Minen. We go to the oversight visit, unannounced visit of the 13th of August 2025. Again, it was distributed to us. Member Walters, your thing is on.
Chair, I wasn't at that, so I can't propose.
The oversight visit at Red Cross. I was Member van Minen.
I would propose it, but I do think that we do need to revisit the issue of the allegations by the NCC, considering that the member is no longer a member of parliament. So I think it's unlikely we'll get anything there. I think that we do have to also, if I may, I would propose that we cannot proceed with any kind of resolution, any kind of investigation there unless we actually get substantiated allegations.
We are nodding here in the committee room on the proposal by Member van Minen. I see a hand, Member Van Vogel.
No, Chair, I want to disagree with that point. Because in that community, in that oversight visit, there was one of the officials confirming they are borrowing out equipment of our hospital, except all the other the allegations. So we can't say because NCC is not there. We heard there needs to be investigation when it comes to Red Cross. Thanks, Chair. But
there are two hands. There are two hands in the committee room. We've heard you, Member Van Vogel. I'll give over to the member who have raised the issue first, Member van Minen, and then Member Walters.
Thank you very much. I think we must be very careful not to confuse issues. There was a question about the loaning of hospital equipment between hospitals. That is a completely separate issue to allegations, unsubstantiated allegations brought by an ex-member of the Provincial Parliament. And I think we need to keep those separate. Quite honestly, I think the issue of the loaning of equipment is something that needs to be addressed with the department as to what the processes and procedures that are followed are. It was not a complaint by a staff member. It was something that was raised as procedure. And I think we need to keep that very, very separate from the issue of somebody who, A, is not a member of this committee or of this House, being a member of the Honourable Adams from National Parliament, who does not have a bearing on this particular jurisdiction, and the issue of the no longer member of province, being Member Jacobs, ex-Member Jacobs. And I think we mustn't conflate issues. Thank you.
Member Walters.
Chair, I just, and I don't want to raise it as a point of order, but we are, it's in a sense a point of order. We're actually busy dealing with minutes. That sounds like a matter arising from the minutes, so I can't propose it, I can't second, I wasn't at the meeting, so, but I just think let's not sidetrack the item that we're on at the moment.
I was at the meeting, and then I'll also give my remarks. I see Member Van Vogel, your hand is up, and then I will then give my inputs as well. Member Van Vogel.
Yeah, Chair, I hear the member van Minen. During that allegations and that decision, the member was still a member of the House. We can't say now the member is no longer a member of the House. Now we can't do it anymore. When we agree on that, he was still a member of the House. So I don't know, but you will make your observation of your whatever on the issue. But for me, it's unfair. If there's allegations, then it needs to be investigated.
Thank you, members. Member van Minen, your last bite so that I can conclude it.
Thank you. If I can just point out here that it was, in fact, I think it's important to read minutes. It was, in fact, agreed that Member Jacobs, as a member of the committee, must submit the allegations in writing to the committee. This will enable the committee to refer the matter. Member Jacobs is no longer a member. I do not believe that he has submitted anything in writing. So it is something that of this particular point can't actually proceed. And that's in terms of the recommendations in this actual report and as to what was agreed to at the time.
Members, I agree with Member van Minen. I have not received anything in writing as was agreed. up until then, members, as soon as we receive anything in writing from the relevant quarters from where it must come from, then I will bring it to the committee, and then we will then take a decision based on what would be submitted to me in writing. So members, on that note, oh yes, I was just being advised for the correctness of the procedure going forward. We would then take that out of the records for this purpose because of what has happened to Member Jacobs.
You can't take it out, Chair. It can't be right. It's part of the minutes. You are resolving something, you are deciding on something else, but it must stay in the minutes.
Member, all right, I will get advised on this, and then I will report back to this committee based on what you have now just raised, because both arguments make sense, but it's the legalities of the procedure that we need to get our heads around. On that note, members, thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.